What's up guys, K-Plays here. With the demo finally in our hands, we have a good idea of what the new state of Hunting Horn will be. I've been taking some time to really get a good feel for it, and also to gauge the community's reception of it. Some of you absolutely love it, some of you might have a few worries, and surprisingly, I've noticed that some of you actually aren't fans at all. Whatever your opinions towards it may be, we can all agree that Hunting Horn has changed in a big way. Just like Bow and World, Hunting Horn has transformed from a slower, more methodical weapon to a fast-paced powerhouse. In this video I'll be going over everything that's changed, sharing my thoughts, and addressing some of the community's opinions as well. Without any further ado though, let's talk Hunting Horn. Starting off with the biggest change, we'll be addressing the new song mechanics. There are three things you'll notice right off the bat. World Song Q and Iceborne's Echo Note are gone. There are three variable notes instead of the usual 2 plus white or purple being locked in by default, and the note combinations for songs no longer use multiple colors. What we essentially have here is song buffing but simplified. Instead of stringing together various notes and then applying individual buffs, each note color now has its own corresponding song that will activate once you stock 2 in a row. Self-improvement specifically is now activated automatically with the Neutral Recital and the slide beat, which we'll talk about later, or bundled up with the rest of your songs, which we'll talk about now. Queuing 3 different notes in any order will load a new recital called the Magnificent Trio. This wild spinning and bursting combo is what we saw in the showcase video. Playing it will activate your entire song list all at once, which is basically the same as giving every horn the melody extender song. Between both of these new abilities, song maintenance is now more of a passive mechanic than something you actually have to focus on. There really shouldn't be many moments where your entire song list is inactive. On the off chance that a buff does go down, you can easily just attack twice to reapply it, but that honestly won't happen with how often you'll be using the Trio Recital for offensive reasons. The reason the devs revised the song mechanics is probably twofold. The first is probably to make Hunting Horn more accessible to those who couldn't quite get a hang of maintaining songs while hunting monsters at the same time. If you weren't comfortable with Hunting Horn before, chances are it was because your songs weren't up very consistently or you weren't hunting very well because you were too worried about song upkeep. Now the weapon practically does all the work for you on that front, so you can put 100% of your attention on fighting without worrying about how effectively you manage buffs. That's likely also the second reason. With buffing pretty much set to autopilot, the usual balance between fighting and buffing has been fused, so you can do both things at the same time without actively splitting your attention. That's something that can be taken advantage of at any skill level. While we're on the subject of damage dealing, the offensive part of the weapon is also something that needs to be talked about here. The main thing we've been wondering about after seeing the showcase is how the combat will play out. Will it be all wild soundburst recitals and fancy new combos, or will things be more along the lines of the old playstyle of throwing out calculated counter jabs between monster attacks? Well, the answer mostly lies somewhere in the middle. See, the majority of the old moveset is still the same as ever, and we now additionally have the ability to access several different attacks from a draw instead of just a note 1 forward slam. That used to be a tricky advanced technique you could pull off in Iceborne, but now it's bait right into the moveset. We did lose the flourish, the neutral hilt stab, and recital animations, but in return we have several new moves to play with. The theme of these added moves seems to be fast hits and fluid transitions. You're no longer able to do every attack from idle position because each move now sets a path for the attack animation that can follow it, but this allows for much smoother combos because recovery time between swings is far lower. Quickly mixing and matching your combos in various ways in order to string notes together mid-battle really comes in handy for when you want to load up trio recitals for burst damage and song refreshes. That'll most likely become the new combat loop for this version of Hunting Horn. Use the best attack for the situation, work in one of each note to prime your big performance, and let it fly when you get a good opening. There are some additional aspects to the attacking side of the weapon besides the basic moveset too. If you look at this icon here, you'll notice that there's a gauge that fills up as you attack. Once it's full, you'll be able to chain your recitals into a follow-up echo attack. Not only does this deal a lot of damage, but it also activates a unique song called the Infernal Melody. The Infernal Melody on the demo horn is Song of Raging Flames, which gives a stronger damage boost that overrides normal attack up for as long as it's active. I'm assuming that there will be other options in the full game to give back a bit of the variety lost from the other song lists being simplified. Note that you won't be able to start working towards an Infernal Melody attack until the last one's song wears off, so this won't be a buff you can maintain indefinitely. It's more of a temporary boost you get as a reward for aggressive play. Rounding out the final part of the basic moves, the Neutral Recital has a very interesting factor to it. If you play Generations or Generations Ultimate, you'll recognize this animation from Adept Style and the Invigoration Hunting Art. Back then, this recital had iframes at the beginning of the move that allowed you to dodge through attacks while also countering with an attack of your own. Well, guess what? Those iframes are actually still there, so you can use this move almost like a guard point that you'd normally find on other weapons. It's incredibly rare to see defensive options on a Hunting Horn, so the counter recital is going to be a pretty different thing to get used to, but really useful once you do. Be warned though that the timing is important, because you'll only be safe when your hunter is spinning themselves and their horn forward. After that, you can be hit while you're recovering your stance. This will be best used against things like roars and attacks with single hitboxes that line up with your iframes. Longer moves and combos that hit multiple times can still get you. Lastly, there's the special Silkbind moves. Slide Beat is another self-improvement recital attack that doubles as a counter move, this time pulling you into a fancy gap closing combo that gives innate super armor while you're in motion. You'll need to be a bit careful with this one, since just like Rocksteady Mantle and World, it only negates reactions to oncoming attacks while letting all the damage still go through. If you have it charged, you can also follow up with an Echo attack after this move to activate your Infernal Melody. Last but certainly not least, there's the Earthshaker. This move has a medium amount of risk to it because it'll fail if you don't aim correctly and miss the first hit, and the second hit is one of the few moves in our new arsenal that has significant recovery frames. I've been finding it more ideal to line up your recovery frames with the monster's longer animations to land it accurately and safely. And windows like the end of big attack animations or during the end of a knockdown as a monster gets up seems to be the best way to consistently land it. It's definitely worth mastering because the stab and the following sound burst deal heavy burst damage. Making use of both of these moves will be the key to getting those wyvern rides, so start practicing. With all of the changes covered, let's talk what they all mean. Opinions are definitely split when it comes to whether or not everything is really for the better here. However you may feel about the new horn, there's three things that really can't be argued by either side. It's been heavily buffed as a weapon compared to the older versions, but it's also been heavily changed on the offensive side and heavily simplified when it comes to song mechanics. Extra power is always appreciated, but it might have gotten a bit too much. Seeing that as of the moment I'm recording this video, it's sitting at number 2 in the demo speedrun tiers. After several years in games of being at the bottom though, I'm certainly not complaining. We are still a class with the ability to buff teammates though, so some of the 100% offensive weapons should by all means top our damage potential. Tiers will inevitably change in the full game as we get our entire selection of gear and skill sets that'll benefit each weapon in different ways, but still, hunting horn anywhere near as high as it is now is wild, even in the demo. I never thought I'd see the day. While I feel that top 5 might be a bit too high, sitting comfortably in the middle of the pack would be absolutely fine if you ask me. Coming in at number 6 or 7 is still loads better than consistently 13th or 14th. Now, most of the complaints seem to be coming from players that don't like the feel of the fancy quick combos or the lack of complexity in the new song system. Really, I get it. Personally though, I love the feel of the new moveset. Slower and more deliberate was nice, but I'm not ashamed to admit to the more purist old school hunting horn users out there that I'm loving being a combo happy little speed demon for once. These moves just feel so right for hunting horn to me. You aren't fighting, you're boldly dancing right in the face of the monster to the tune of your own music. And if they get too close, they coincidentally get hit by that giant club you're swinging around to make said music. Love it or hate it though, it's definitely a departure from the old ways. You really can't argue that. With the lower attack rate back in the day, you had to make every hit count, which make every swing feel more impactful and rewarding to land. Pulling off various attack chains with a new moveset is no less satisfying for me, but for the players that have more specific tastes, I can see how it might just not be the same. The one complaint I can't get behind though is the claim that the new arsenal is brain dead and button mashy. That couldn't be farther from the truth. Choosing the ideal moves for the occasion will still be a thing, even going from a heavy methodical approach to a more snappy fast-paced combat style. More speed in attacks don't mean less thoughtful play, it just means we have to approach with a different thought process. There's actually a lot of technical depth and nuanced interactions between the attacks in the revised toolkit. Just like the bow users in World when their weapon got redesigned, more time to dissect the smaller details and get used to controls is all we're going to need. Something that's possibly even more divisive than the moveset is a simplified song system. Again, I believe that this was done specifically to lower the bar for newer horn users and let you shift to more of an entirely combat-focused approach. If you look at it with that as the aim, it's a complete success really. The issue people are taking here though is that in their eyes, deliberately building up, playing, and maintaining songs while fighting is part of the draw of the weapon, and really it is. Songs are what make hunting horn and not just a different hammer. In all technicality, that's still the case because they're not actually gone, but the way they work now, they admittedly do feel like something that happens to you automatically than an ability you use on purpose. If you ask me, the way we applied songs did need to be streamlined. You had to use specific attack orders to get individual buffs, on top of micromanaging their timers, on top of taking short pauses to leave yourself open to punishes a decent handful of times per hunt in order to do so, on top of taking damage penalties to the weapon in exchange for the ability. Just doesn't seem like quite an even trade to me, and that's coming from someone who's been doing all that for years and loving every minute of it. With this new way, I don't mind too much that the notes to cue songs have been simplified or that there's an auto buff feature, but let's be real, they went a little overboard here. It might help bring new players to the dude side, but the level of ease they added for that purpose is kind of, let's say, unnecessary. If changing the recital animations for the old shuffle dance to the new trio and evade recital animations we have now was all that changed, I would have been perfectly happy. In that scenario, there'd be no more risky time-wasting breaks in the action, and you'd be rewarded for effective use of recitals as attacks with more than just an activated buff. We ended up getting that and a lot more though. Some like it, some like me think it's great, but the reworked dial could have been turned down a notch or two, and others no longer feel like it's the weapon they used to know and love. It would be a real shame if just this hunting horn's small following shows the potential to grow in numbers, though we might lose a few. But if you're part of that unhappy group, I actually have some good news for you. There might be a way to reclaim some of the old way of playing in Rise. Fair warning though, this next bit contains some info that hasn't been shared officially yet, so if you'd rather not be spoiled early, skip ahead to the time on screen. For those of you that don't mind collecting a bit of advanced knowledge though, here it is. Recently, information has been uncovered that reveals the ability to swap out certain moves and mechanics for your weapons for different alternative options. As you might have guessed, one of the options for Hunting Horn is to exchange the more set it and forget it approach to the songs we're seeing now with something that sounds more like the way it's always been. The other version of the song mechanic is described as a mode that revolves around stacking notes and activating various buffs with the recitals, but the one we have in the demo now is geared more towards skipping song management by activating songs as a passive function mid-combat. I'd be willing to bet that the former songs will be more effective in some way to exchange for the slightly lower ease of use. There's also apparently going to be a Super Pound replacement that deals lower damage but lets off a sound burst with high stun values, and a replacement for Earthshaker that sounds oddly similar to the song echoing web trap I was hoping for in my wishlist video. Focusing on the song mode changes for now though, the alternate version might not be exactly like the old way, but it does sound like something more familiar to the longtime Hunting Horn users than what we're seeing now. I'm going to hold off on deciding which one I might prefer for sure until we see all the advantages and drawbacks for each, but I will say that as of right now I'm leaning slightly towards the second option. Until we know for sure though, it's just helpful knowing that we'll have options and that the new Hunting Horn potentially has a second chance of winning over anyone that might not like it right now. Going back to the spoiler-free portion of this video, Rise's Hunting Horn is a Hunting Horn built for power, speed, and finesse. The devs really knocked it out of the park with a massive glow up I don't think any of us saw coming. With it they managed to make some of us love it even more and others consider loving it for the first time. Everyone might not be totally happy right now, but for those that aren't, I'll just say give it time because the full game might pleasantly surprise you. It'll be exciting to see how things will be for the hopefully much larger Horn crowd in the near future now that we're not stuck as the permanent underdog of the roster. We still have so much more to find out. What do the rest of the songs and song lists look like? Will it be just as strong on the buffing side with all this new offensive power? Does the new speedy combo focus approach lend itself to a strong elemental and status playstyle, or will raw damage be the way to go? Will we stay as high on the charts as we are now, or will we settle to a more comfortable mid-tier position? Only time will tell, and when it does, I'll be sure to pass the info on to you guys. In the meantime, do me a favor and hit the like and subscribe buttons if you enjoyed this video and want to see more. Drop a comment down below too if you want to kick up a conversation. Support and feedback are always appreciated. There's definitely going to be more coming from me as soon as I dive into Rise, because I plan on sharing my hopefully great experience with all of you. Until then though, this has been another K-Plays and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.